good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our New Homes for Cityscape recap. It's September 20th, 2022. My name is Jeremiah Rivera, and to my right is my co-partner, co-pilot, Zelda the cat, who is very passionate about this development and may be joining in from any moment now. We have a ton of great information for you today. Thank you to everyone who's joined us tonight. We really appreciate you taking the time to be involved in this project, in this development. You could be doing anything else right now, but you've chosen to spend part of your evening with us. We really appreciate that. And we have a lot of great information for you. Uh, so we're going to go ahead and kick it off and go right into the introductions. Just before we do that, before I transition and hand it to Councilmember Evan Shabazz for her introductory remarks, I do want to let everyone know that we just hit the record button, so this is being recorded. And with that, I am delighted to hand it to Councilmember Evan Shabazz to kick us off.
Thank you so much, Jeremiah. And hopefully, I just came back from the dentist, and when you're kind of numb, right? I hope I didn't put lipstick all over my face. But at any rate, if I did, you all forgive me. But certainly, I am very, very excited about this project, what it's going to mean for people who have not been able to access affordable housing, and certainly the development of up to 240 disaster resilient energy efficient homes is very, very important, especially in view of the disasters that have been in the Houston area. And so we know that nothing can certainly protect us from everything, but to know that at the onset, we're working very hard to be able to maintain safe housing for people is just wonderful. And so it's my understanding that it's up to 122 homes that are sold to home buyers impacted by Hurricane Harvey. And
I think we lost the council member, but we will welcome her back when she's able to join us to finish off her remarks. With that said, this is being recorded, as we mentioned, so all this information will be sent out to you, but that's going to be part of this slide, which is our housekeeping. Um, for everyone who's joining us online, please mute your microphone. That will help make sure that everyone can hear this presentation. Again, as I've mentioned a couple of times, and I'm mentioning it multiple times because people are still joining us, so they may not have heard it the first time or even the second, and maybe not even the fourth or fifth time. But this presentation is being recorded, and it's our intention to get that out to you in the next few business days for everyone who's registered. In the meantime, please put your questions into the chat box while we're going through the presentation. Livia Christina Bush, who is a member of the Housing Community Development Department, will be responding in real time. And I just put the hello message in the chat for those of you who aren't very familiar with Microsoft Teams, so that we can access that. Um, while we are taking questions through the chat box, we also encourage you to email your questions to this mailbox, hsfdp@houstontx.gov, by close of business this Friday. And what we're going to do is we're going to take all the questions we get in the chat, and we're going to take all the questions we get to that mailbox and do a round one FAQ. We will also send that out to all of you through email sometime next week, depending on how many questions we get. And I want to be very clear. You can send questions after the close of business to that mailbox. They just won't be part of that round one FAQ. We'd have to cut it off at some point just so we can respond back to all of you all in reasonable time. And I mentioned this a little bit earlier. We do plan on getting this recording and this presentation, this slide deck out to you. And everyone registered within 2 to 3 business days. So you should have it before the end of close of business that Friday, the 23rd. So let's
thank
go
you,
ahead and go
Jeremiah.
through.
Hopefully, you heard me turn it over to you. I don't know what's going on with this virtual world, but certainly I do appreciate this presentation and look forward to it. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you, council member. And I was just going through the housekeeping, just a couple of highlights because I think a few people joined after the technical issues. We are recording this, and we will send it out to everyone 2 to 3 business days from now. And folks have the opportunity to send email us their questions for round one of our FAQs at this Harvey single family mailbox that I'm putting into the chat. Give me just one second. So it's in the chat now. That's the email address if you all want to copy and paste it. And again, it'll be in the presentation when we send it out. But in terms of today's agenda, for those of you that may have joined us for our earlier community engagement sessions, which a councilor referenced, the first kind of section, first one or two sections will look very similar, and a ton of new information in section 3. So we want to recognize that we had a ton of interest for this. We had over 200 people register. So we're going to kick it off with a project background so that everyone has an understanding of the development at the Cityscape site. A little bit of what, which is item 2, will be the community engagement. A brief summary of what those events look like in March going through May. And importantly, the purpose of that was to gather your feedback, summarize it, and incorporate it into a notice of funding availability. So we're going to spend a significant amount of time recapping the information and the feedback we heard from all of you in the area. And then finally, step 3, which is going to be that next steps, how that feedback will be incorporated into the NOFA so you can see what that looks like. And then we're going to go into the early stages of walking you through the home buyer process for these future homes, the new homes that will be at Cityscape. So project background, as I mentioned, this is going to be familiar to some of you who've joined us in the past, but this development is made possible through the Harvey Single Family Development Program, which has 3 key aims. And they're all there are 3 separate aims, but they're all intertwined. The first is home ownership, to create those new attainable home ownership opportunities for residents that were impacted by Hurricane Harvey, but also to make sure that those homes meet the community needs. So it's not just about new single family disaster resilient energy efficient homes. We want to make sure those homes match what the community members were telling us that they need. And then finally, again, all this is intertwined, but making sure that folks going and buying into that development will be at a variety of incomes, making sure that some homes will be at sold at attainable rates in addition to market rate options. So for context, if this is the first time you're hearing about this development, we're calling it the city's new homes for Cityscape because it is along Cityscape Avenue as shown here. Um, Very specifically, it is along, it's sandwiched between East Orem and Highway 288 and Cityscape Avenue. The development itself that the city has purchased is, the land is about just under 15 acres, 14.9. As the council member mentioned, we're projecting up to 240 total homes, with up to 122 attainable homes, and we'll talk about what that means in more detail. That number of homes is up to, and we're very particular when we mention up to. These are not finalized just yet. It's going to be partially dependent on the notice of funding availability, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But we're projecting based off some, working with our consultant that this is the maximum amount of homes that will be available at that site. And speaking of projection, I want to make very clear this is a draft. I know it says in watermark draft, but just to be very clear, this is one projection of what that development down the road can look like at this site. This is not a final. Each developer that participates in our notice of funding availability will be responsible for submitting their own ideas. That's going to be partially based on what all of you had to tell us earlier this year. Speaking of, let's go ahead and go through that engagement process. So some of you, again, are going to be very familiar with this slide. We kicked off our community engagement in March, so earlier this year. We kicked off with a community leaders focus group, and then 2 and 3 listed here on this slide happen simultaneously. So it's not quite 2 and then 3, it's 2 and 3 at the same time. We had that community engagement period that began in March and ran through the end of May, and we had those 3 hybrid community meetings that people could attend either online or in person. We also had a dedicated website where folks could leave feedback 24/7 in case they couldn't make those meetings. And through those meetings, we heard over 200 different comments and votes about what you all would like to see at this development. Which leads us all to today, where we took the summer not just to work on the community recap session, that was a vital part of it, and now we're going to go through and talk about what we heard from you and how it's being represented. And just finally, you may have seen, you may have attended, you may have participated in these particular pictures. The first picture on the left is a picture from our very first community engagement meeting and some feedback we heard from you in person. Picture on the right is one of the online tools that we use to collect your feedback at that same meeting. But this is, I think, all new information for everyone here. This is a summary of the engagement that engagement period, high level summary. So the next few slides are going to go into more detail about each of these topics. And this is in descending order of what we heard from the most. So we categorized your feedback and separated them into these categories to kind of help get some connective tissue from what we heard. And so what that means in plain terms, we got the most amount of comments and votes under comments that we categorized as home design. And then second place was green spaces, parks, and trees. Those were 1 and 2. They're pretty close, but home design was on top. There's a little bit of a gap between those two and neighborhood mobility, another gap between that and safety. And then homeowner association is kind of its own separate bucket, which we'll talk about. But in terms of home design, we heard a ton of different comments that essentially got to the point that you all want to see um, townhome design that promotes individuality, that individual home ownership concept. So very specific comments about design facades that are colorful, that aren't very samey. You wanted to see yards, fences that helped, again, promote individuality. A lot of comments about individual flower beds. You all are very passionate about flowers and trees. Porches that you can sit in your front porch and talk to your neighbor, and green spaces in between townhomes or right around townhomes. We also heard in terms of home design a lot of feedback from natural lighting through windows, a lot of comments about open kitchens as well. In terms of that green space, parks and trees, again, we kind of shaped that into one category. You wanted a sense of an opportunity that green space could promote a sense of community. So you want individual home ownership, but you also want to be connected to your neighbor through your green space. So through shared amenities like park benches, pavilions, picnic tables, where you can get together and have your birthday parties, celebrations, things of that nature. You also wanted to make sure that your children had shaded playgrounds, so that way they had options to play during the hot summer months. And a lot of comments about water amenities in the children play spaces. Uh, Kind of rounding out this broad topic, lots of comments on you would like to see trees, bushes, and vegetation on your walking trails, and dog park kind of bringing up the rear. In terms of neighborhood mobility, you wanted some alternatives to driving within your community. So a lot of comments to make sure that if you want to take your two wheels, your bicycles, that's a safe option for you within the Cityscape development. You want to be able to walk safely from cars. You don't want to have to worry about people driving through very quickly through the neighborhood. And you also specifically mentioned walking places and making sure that uh, suggestions there are implemented into the design. And then kind of the last bucket here is safety. So you mentioned very specifically kind of side in terms of gating and fencing. There are specific comments around the fact that there's fencing to promote individuality, but there's also safety to promote fencing to promote safety and making sure that the neighborhood itself is well lit. And finally, and this is its own bucket because we did ask this specific survey question for this on our website. There was broad support for homeowner associations in the cityscape development. So that said, as we go through these next few slides, these are comments that you left to us directly, either at those in-person meetings or online. With some folks deciding to either make these comments, we're supporting with upvotes for those little colored stickers if you joined us, if you remember that. So this is again the top theme. This is the theme that got the most comments and the most votes combined. Uh, Home design. So we heard again a lot about individuality. You can read these comments. I won't read each one verbatim because that'll get quite boring. But you can see here a theme, right? Uh, Towards that individuality, colorful palettes. That third comment, personal mailboxes, not a community box. You wanted, again, just that sense of individuality. Even if the development is townhomes, you still want to have that individual sense of home ownership. In terms of the homes themselves, a lot of comments again about open kitchens, yards, which again ties into that individuality. And then that last comment at the end, there were some specific comments about the design, so modern townhome, and garden style homes at the end. There wasn't a whole lot of specific comments like that on what that would look like. But you could see I put that here just to show a sense that not all comments stuck to one key design element. This one mentioned that townhome design, but it also mentioned that intentionality with the dog park and the splash pool for children. So some of these ideas were coded in more than one spot, but we did receive over 200 individual comments and votes. So here you'll be able to see the green spaces, parks, and trees and some of the specific comments here. A lot of commentary about thoughtful connections to Sims Bayou and making sure that trails have that connection or lead toward that direction. Um, a lot of comments about spray mists, water amenities for children's play areas, and shading. So a key theme here is that you want a place where when it's 100 degrees out in the summer, the children are going to have an opportunity to play and not get dehydrated. They'll be shaded. You wanted robust children play areas, essentially. We also got a lot of comments around, again, that livable places, making sure that that is adhered to, and towards the rear, again, those a couple of votes are dog parks. So y'all are kind of a big fans of dogs over at the Cityscape area. In terms of neighborhood mobility, that first comment again is kind of showing you the bleeding edge of neighborhood mobility versus green space. This comment at top again is that recommendation that the green space should have that thoughtful intentionality to connect to Sims Bayou, so you're able to move within the development itself, get into Sims Bayou. And a lot of comments here around making it easier to bike and walk. So more so than a lot of the community engagement that we've had, a lot of comments about biking racks. Either there's just very passionate bikers that attended those meetings, where just folks really want to be able to bike at this development. Uh, Towards the bottom, you'll see a lot of specific ideas around traffic mitigation. So sidewalks to walk safely throughout the development, aside from trails, but also painted crosswalks, stop signs, speed bumps, kids at play signs. So it's very clear that there's a desire for traffic mitigation that makes it safe for children to go through the streets, and also, of course, for adults to go through the streets. But you can see here very intentional comment about kid at play signs. And then there was also a few thoughts about some suggestions to make sure that it's easy to connect to the metro bus station, making sure that that's an option for folks who want to take public transit. And this is the last of our slides. I kind of combine them here, these two themes here, safety and HOAs. Mostly because in safety, the comments were pretty much the same, either a reference towards gating for security features and making sure things were well lit. And again, just overwhelming support for a strong HOA that will help keep of the amenities that were mentioned in the previous slides. Trees and splash parks and water features and kids playgrounds. There were again overwhelming support for that for this development. So that was your community feedback, and that's again the purpose of those first few meetings was to gather that community feedback so that we can incorporate it into a notice of funding availability, which is how developers will apply to develop this lot. Uh, and that will be an open competition, which we're about to talk about in a little bit. But that is the high level feedback and your specific comments that developers will have access to as they design their proposals. So that leads us to our next steps, which is an updated timeline for you. So you may remember this slide from the previous engagement meetings, but this has been updated with new dates. We just went over number one, which is incorporating your feedback into that notice of funding availability, which is item 2. And we anticipate launching that actually on September 30th, so at the end of this month. Um, that will be public. We will email that will go on our city procurement site, and so you'll be able to see the exact language I made into the notice of funding availability in terms of your engagement. But it's be very similar to what we've just seen. So that will be again September 30th. And it's our intention to have a developer selected by the end of this year, before the end of December, which will allow that developer to begin construction in April of 2023 with the goal of pre-selling homes in January 2024. Now, if you remember the dates on our last slide, they're a little bit different than this slide. So I do want to highlight that text on the bottom right, the all important, all dates on the slides are estimated and subject to change. The further out we get into the future, the more wild cards there will be. We're pretty certain. I shouldn't say very, but we're pretty certain that NOFA is going to get out September 30th, and all the other dates again will be subject to change. And we're going to do our best to make sure we hit all of these milestones. And this is where we're transitioning towards the end of our presentation and talking about the home buyer process to help everyone start getting ready for that. And then we'll have a demonstration of where some of these links are that we're going to get to. If you weren't able to join us in the prior presentations, the council member did a great job of mentioning some of these homes will be set aside at affordable rates for folks impacted by Hurricane Harvey. And here's where we're going to talk about that. So that first slide here, that up to 194, that should be up to 240. Again, that's going to be subject based on that notice of funding availability competition and what the awarded bid looks like. So that should say up to 240. And whatever that final number is, that developer will submit their proposal. They'll still have to go through a permitting process. So it's going to be a little bit of time before we know that final number. But whatever that number is, that's where that next arrow comes into play. 51% of that final number will be set aside at an attainable rate, and we're going to talk about that in just a second. But the other 49%, the way that home buyer process will work will be just the traditional, what we're calling traditional home buyer process. The home buyer will secure a 30-year fixed rate mortgage. They'll work with their realtor and their family, whoever is helping them go through that home buyer process, and they will go to the developer directly to buy those homes. Again, that 49% that it will be sold at market rate. For that 51% attainable rate, the city is investing with the developer to bring down the sales price of those homes uh, and what we're calling the affordability gap. So I want to make this clear. This is a home ownership opportunity. Everyone living at this development will be homeowners. To purchase that home at that 51% that we're mentioning, that home buyer will need to secure a 30-year fixed rate mortgage. And the city's investment will help bridge what we're calling the affordability gap between that 30-year fixed rate mortgage and the market rate price. And so we don't have an exact figure for you right now because it's going to vary by home buyer. So whatever that affordability gap, that difference, if it's this much, the city's investment will bridge that gap. If it's this much, the city will bridge that gap. So it's just going to depend on that home buyer. So again, everyone here will be have secured that 30-year fixed rate mortgage. That next arrow down is to be eligible for this program, you must have been impacted by Hurricane Harvey, which to speak plainly means you must have lived in the city of Houston on the day Hurricane Harvey hit. You must also earn up to 80% area median income, and that's determined by HUD yearly. So that's going to be updated again in just a couple of, well, by this time next year for sure. I'll show you what that looks like in just a slide for context. Um, but that's part of the program. Those are the kind of the key planks of the eligibility for this program. A home buyer going through that process will also have a 5-year secondary lien placed on their home. But then they will go, at that point, we'll work with the developer to purchase the home. So they will be homeowners as well. So there's just those extra steps to get to that traditional home buyer process. In terms of what the home buyer certification looks like, this is for that 51% of the homes. Again, the 49%, that's going to go through what we're calling the traditional home buyer process. Step one here is actually an optional new home buyer interest survey, which we'll show you in just a minute. Uh, the Cityscape development is not the only development that the city of Houston is partnering with developers to build new single-family, disaster-resilient, energy-efficient homes. We have other developments throughout the city of Houston, including in District D, and we're going to show you what that survey looks like. By completing that survey, you'll be able to select which developments interest you, and we will let you know when homes are ready for pre-sale. Which brings us to item 2, the Universal Homebuyer application. That hasn't launched yet, and we're gonna have our own dedicated webinars on how to walk you through that process. But that's going to be where you upload your income eligibility documents to the city for us to review, which is step three, the eligibility, income, and certification application review. We'll review your income to make sure that you are at that 80% area median income and that you lived in the city of Houston when Hurricane Harvey hit, and other program eligibility. And at that point, which is step four, moving on, we would either contact you to fix issues of your application, or if you've gone through and everything's a thumbs up, that's when we'll issue you a pre-qualification letter. Um, so at that point in time, when you had that issue pre-qualification letter in hand, when homes are at 66% construction, we will work with you to schedule a home design meeting with the awarded developer. So that's going to be when homes are about 2 months out from being complete. So you'll be able to give some input into that kind of last phase of that home. And at that point, we get to where everyone wants to get to, which is step six, the loan closing and key exchange. And again, this process is for that 51%. Um, and we will have dedicated webinars to walk you through all this down the road when we get a little bit closer to the home buyer certification process. This is an important link, a slide here. This has links to some websites we're about to show you in a second. This is where you get information on not only the Cityscape development, but our other developments that we're partnering with developers throughout the city of Houston. That's that first link, the New Homes for Houston. And I think one of my colleagues will put that link in the chat for folks who want to copy and paste that over. For those of you who join us over the phone, that link is houstontx.gov/housing/homes/new. Again, we're going to send you this webinar. We're going to send you this PowerPoint deck. So don't feel like you have to write down this URL. But if you're very excited, and I hope you are, about some of these developments, you can go and take a look at that in just a few minutes. We're going to walk you through that now. That survey, which we'll also show you in just a second, we have a shorter link for you. It's a bit.ly link, so bit.ly/HCD new homes for sale, all in one, no spaces in between. And then finally, this is a little bit different email. Earlier we had the FAQ email. If you have specific questions about the homebuyer process, this is the email that you want to inbox that you want to send us an email to, and that is newhomebuyer@houstontx.gov. Before we go through the demonstration, as you saw in the development timeline, homes won't be ready for sale at Cityscape for some time, which means that if you aren't quite ready for homeownership now, you have an opportunity, you have time and opportunity to get there. So I want to share some resources that our colleagues that are on this call, but our HCD colleagues have put together that are free and are on demand 24/7 now. The first of which is our 360 Road to Home Ownership webinar series. That's 4 different webinars that will help you through the entire homeownership journey. So there's a link here, a power link. It was a very long link, so I wasn't able to shorten it. Again, this will be in the presentation. The 4 webinars include how to build credit. Well, actually, I should say explaining credit, Credit 101. The second webinar is the one way to building the perfect team, which will talk about the importance of having realtors and other folks that can help you through the first-time home buyer journey, which is also related to road rules, what to expect on that journey in home ownership. And then importantly, especially for first-time home buyers, housing tune-ups, which will help you think through maintenance. For those of you that maybe haven't owned a home, who have, if you're a little bit younger, maybe you lived in apartments most of your life, there's a whole bunch of things to consider, like maintenance, property taxes, things that you don't have to think about when you're a renter. And that webinar will touch on some of those issues. Again, these have all already happened, so you can watch them on demand if any of these topics or all these topics interest you. And just one more slide, and then we'll go through that demonstration. Um, that same team that put together that webinar series is putting together a new series called Building Communities and Strengthening Families. The first webinar for that, and you can see here, let me actually go on the first picture is the website where the webinars will be kind of linked to. The first webinar will be about the immigration process and how to become a naturalized citizen. So if that's something that is something that could be beneficial to you or someone you know, definitely pass the word out to folks. Oops, sorry, let me go back one more. Okay. So that's going to be the first webinar. That's going to be on Monday, September 26th. In October, they're going to have an awesome webinar series on financial literacy. So that's going to be throughout October. There's going to be 3 financial literacy events, and it's going to be broken out by generation. So you'll have a webinar series on a webinar on financial literacy for baby boomers, another one for Gen X, and another one for millennials. So whatever generation that you feel you're a part of, either by your birth date or feel in your heart you're a part of, you can pick that particular financial literacy webinar. That those links aren't out yet, but that's upcoming in October. And so that's I'm going to turn my head and I'm looking at my other monitor here, and I'm going to pull up those websites that we mentioned on the previous slides to kind of give you an idea of what they look like. This is the new homes for sale web page, and so here's where you can find that new home buyer interest survey, which we'll show you in just a minute. As I mentioned, we have multiple developments we're partnering with developers on to help bring affordable homes at attainable price points throughout the city of Houston. Here you can see the Cityscape website, how to learn more. But on this page, you'll see a snapshot of each of those developments, the number of homes, approximately where they are in the city of Houston. We have more down here. So a few more in District D, in OST. So as I mentioned, for example, here it gives you the neighborhood and the number of homes that will be at market rate and the number that will be at affordable rates. And each one of these has its own dedicated website that you can click on. So this is the Cityscape website. Um, Takes just a second to load, and it's even more information on the program. And as construction begins, we will place pictures and post updates on this website. Here you can download prior presentations, and here's where we'll upload today's webinar and the PowerPoint presentation as well. So definitely take a look at this website, which again is at houstontx.gov/housing/homes/new, and take a look and see and learn more about these developments. Here is the new home buyer interest survey. It's pretty straightforward. Um, the first section is just going to be general demographic information, so we can know, roughly the type of homes that you're looking for. Home buyer preparedness. This section is to let us know what kind of resources might you might be interested in. So, for example, if you select, that you haven't saved for a down payment yet, that will help us think about programming and webinars that would be beneficial to the most amount of people that are completing the survey. And then finally, this is the part that is really important. Take a look at that new homes for sale website, and you can select as many of these developments that interest you as possible. I'm not going to select all of them. Pick Cityscape and OST. So let's say those are the 2 developments after doing your research that are interesting to you. When you hit the submit button, that will let us know that those developments are the ones that you're most interested in. And when homes are almost ready for pre-sale, that is when we'll link you. We will directly email you and reach out to you to let you know you can begin filling out that home buyer application process. Or if you're interested in a market rate home, to connect you to the developer, whatever the case may be for wherever you're at. So it doesn't take very long. It's not a lot of questions. It takes less than 5 minutes to fill out, and we will again reach out to you so that way you can begin that home buyer process for any of those developments that you choose. So that is going to take us to the end of the presentation because we had so many folks that again registered for this event, over 200. We are going to take questions in the chat or through that mailbox again, that HSFDP, HSFDP at houstontx.gov. And again, it's our intention to answer all the questions that you put into this chat right here. So if we haven't answered them now, we will answer them in the FAQ. That email blast will come out next week. Again, we will email you this webinar. We will email you the presentation in the next 2 to 3 business days. And we will definitely come back down the road with further updates as we get further along the development process. Again, that takes us to the end of the presentation for tonight. We really appreciate you taking time to join us on this Cityscape Community Recap. And we look forward to working with you to get as many affordable homes out and all of you into those beautiful disaster resilient, energy efficient homes in early 2024. Thank you again, everyone, and have a great night.